Tonight, more bad weather hampers efforts to evacuate a remote far north Queensland community. Also tonight, convicted murderer Darren Chalmers sentenced to life over the killing of a Geelong mother. Off the menu, the Christmas staples proving unaffordable for families this festive season, and the Matildas to play their Olympic qualifier against Uzbekistan in Melbourne. Good evening, Tamara Oudyn with ABC News. Far North Queensland is facing one of its worst flooding events in decades. The Defence Force has been enlisted to help following record rainfall from ex-tropical cyclone Jasper. The small Indigenous community of Wudjil is among the hardest hit, but there have also been hundreds of people evacuated from Cairns' northern beaches. As the rain eases, towns across the far north remain isolated with no power and major roads are cut. Christy Sexton-McGrath reports from Cairns.
For the far north, this disaster is unprecedented. Jaw-dropping amounts of rain have wrought widespread havoc.
It's no longer the Captain Cook Highway, it's the Captain Cook River.
The record-breaking deluge has threatened lives, destroyed properties and isolated towns. Just before midnight, at Wudjil, the water rose quickly.
We had to swim out of there. I had my dog there as well.
There was no help coming as 16 people, including a 7-year-old boy, took refuge on roofs.
Mate, there's no one up here. We're pretty much on our own.
The Deputy Mayor returned this morning to find his childhood home, everything he owns, destroyed.
Lucky we got out of here. We lost everything. We had, have photos.
Patients and staff spent a terrifying night trapped on the roof of the local clinic before getting themselves to safety. Isolated and without power, the clock is ticking for the whole community to be evacuated.
An attempt was made to aerially evacuate Wudjil today, but unfortunately the rain and cloud is still too strong.
With lives in the balance, the Army has been brought in to help.
This event is not over.
Dan Bateman's Cairns home is knee-deep in brown water. He was among 30 people who huddled together in torrential rain on the roof of a house before being rescued.
We had to dodge fridges floating past, big branches. At one point, someone said there was a cow going down the road.
They're now safe in an evacuation centre.
We went to the bus and then we came here.
Emergency crews spent today ferrying people to safety across the raging Barron River.
There are some individual locations that it is very difficult to get to.
Stephanie Schumacher escaped her flooded home with her daughter and pets.
Horrible. Horrible. It was really horrible.
North of Cairns, devastation in Mossman. The SES has responded to more than 40 requests for help every hour for the past 24 hours.
What we've seen over the last couple of days has been absolutely devastating.
This exhausted wallaby was saved.
Attaboy.
To the south, in the centre of Ingham, a potent reminder of what can lurk in floodwater.
You always wanted to see a crocodile?
The 2.8-metre croc was soon roped, wrangled and safely stowed.
Tightened the noose up and basically played him like a fish.
A spectacle for locals. It'll end up in a farm or zoo.
Crocs everywhere here now.
The Euramo pub, temporarily more like a yacht club.
We do understand that there is a lot of places in North Queensland that are absolutely devastated by these floods. We're lucky our water disperses very quickly.
While the rain has eased for now and floodwaters are receding, the far north is not out of the woods yet. Many residents are still without power, roads are damaged, and people are being asked to conserve drinking water as treatment plants come back online.
Danger and heartbreak a week out from what should be the happiest time of year. Christy Sexton-McGrath, ABC News, Cairns.
The Israeli army says it's uncovered its biggest Hamas tunnel yet, releasing images and video of what it claims is a 4-kilometre-long network built to stage large-scale attacks. It comes as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has hit back at calls for a renewed ceasefire, saying Israel will fight to the very end.
Buried under a sand dune, Hamas's intricate labyrinth revealed.
We are going to enter to the biggest tunnel we found in Gaza. It was a secret.
The sheer size big enough to drive through, designed to carry carloads of fighters towards Israel or move hundreds of hostages away, underground, undetected.
Hamas has spent millions of dollars in this project specifically.
The entrance emerges only walking distance from Israel's southern border, snaking 4 kilometres in length, descending 50 metres deep, enforced with steel and concrete. This, the Israeli army says, is the tunnel being built by Hamas militants. The Israeli Defence Force is using these videos to repair its campaign reputation after a bungled operation saw 3 Israeli hostages killed at the hands of their own army. The trio were unarmed, holding this, a makeshift white flag, with a plea for help written in Hebrew with leftover food.
I think they did everything possible so that we would understand. They moved around shirtless so that we wouldn't suspect them of carrying explosives, and they held a white cloth.
One of the men now laid to rest at home.
My child, you were strong. You were a hero. You survived 70 days in hell. Sadness has no end. Love you, Mum.
Israeli media is reporting hostage release negotiations will resume with Qatar as mediator. And although a growing number of Israelis are concerned this campaign is endangering the lives of those held captive, Benjamin Netanyahu is steadfast the war is needed to eradicate Hamas and bring hostages home.
We will fight till the end, and we will achieve all our objectives, eliminating Hamas and ensuring that Gaza will not become again a centre for terror.
Right now, the World Health Organization says Gaza is a scene of horror.
The emergency department is just covered in blood and there are very few staff. Children are being treated on the floor for serious injuries. It's absolute chaos.
Israel's been pushing Gaza's 2.3 million residents south. Nearly half are estimated to be squeezed into the border town of Rafah. As aid trucks dribble in, Gazans jump on, looting what they can. Another glimpse into the desperation of the starving and war-weary in this enclave. Alison Horn, ABC News, Jerusalem.
Back home, a person has died in a fiery crash involving a truck and a car in central Victoria. The 2 vehicles collided this afternoon in Lockwood, causing the truck to roll and the car to catch fire. The driver of the car died at the scene while the truck driver was taken to hospital with minor injuries. Police say the cause of the crash is still being determined and the Calder Alternative Highway remains closed in both directions. Police are searching for 4 people involved in an alleged road rage incident in Melbourne's north that's left 2 motorists shaken. The driver of a grey sedan and his female passenger say they were chased by people on 3 dirt bikes in Coolaroo and were forced to swerve towards oncoming traffic. The riders fled when the car drove to Broadmeadows Police Station.
These motorcycle riders have no regard to other road users, and the fact that they were prepared to follow someone to a police station shows of their just poor regard for community safety.
A callous killer who murdered 2 women decades apart has received a second life sentence in Victoria. Darren Chalmers strangled Geelong mother Annette Stewart to death in 1992, 27 years before he killed Western Australian woman Diane Barrett.
After decades without justice, relief for the family of Annette Stewart.
This is nearly 32 years we've been waiting for this result.
Darren Chalmers was today sentenced to life in prison over the brutal murder of Miss Stewart in 1992, who he bludgeoned with an iron, then strangled with an electrical cord. Chalmers had met Miss Stewart only hours earlier when he visited her home with her partner and other friends. He returned later that night, saying it was his birthday and he had no one to celebrate with. Miss Stewart allowed him to sleep on her couch.
And it was very outgoing, loving, caring, She would do anything for anyone, and she did.
Miss Stewart's death went unsolved for almost 3 decades until Darren Chalmers became a person of interest in the 2019 murder of his neighbour, Western Australian woman Diane Barrett, and was caught in a covert police operation. Chalmers received a life sentence after confessing to strangling the 60-year-old to death. In sentencing today, Justice Andrew Tinney said Miss Stewart's murder was a senseless and vicious crime committed against a defenceless young woman with apparently no motive. He also said that given the subsequent murder, I am entirely unconvinced that you feel any genuine remorse for your crime. Darren Chalmers sat slumped over with his head bowed and didn't respond to today's sentence. He'll be in his 90s before he's eligible for parole.
The fact that she's dead, you can't change that. She will always be dead. But now, knowing that he can never, ever do this to anyone else, it's just wonderful.
Leanne Wong, ABC News, Melbourne.
A woman has died and a man is in hospital under police guard after an alleged stabbing at the National Zoo and Aquarium in Canberra. No charges have been laid, and while police say there's no ongoing threat to the public, the popular tourist spot could remain closed for some time.
Visitors and workers' details were taken before they were ushered out with little information given in return.
They just told us, exit.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of cars, like a lot of the police asking questions to people that are coming out.
She's from the same country as I am, so I'm just worried about it.
Do you know her? Who is she?
I don't know her, because nothing's been revealed yet, so I wasn't there.
Police were called to the zoo just before 1 p.m.
Witnesses have described loud screams from around the commercial kitchen area, and they responded to that.
Officers found the body of a 29-year-old female employee in a storeroom.
It's apparent at this stage that the deceased died as a result of stab wounds. A post-mortem examination will be conducted in coming days, but at this stage it looks like she's been stabbed to death with a knife.
Another employee, a 29-year-old Oaks Estate man, is now in custody. The relationship between the pair is yet to be determined.
He had apparently suffered some self-inflicted injuries, and he was transported to the Canberra hospital, where he remains under police guard.
At the start of the school holidays, it's normally a busy time for the zoo, but with a homicide investigation now underway, it's not certain how long it will need to remain closed.
Our thoughts are with the family and friends of the victim and the fellow workers at the National Zoo and Aquarium.
They've sent an email saying that there'll be psychologists and everyone to talk to about if you're not feeling well and tomorrow.
Anyone with information about the incident is being urged to contact Crime Stoppers. Harry Frost, ABC News, Canberra.
The federal court has allowed the former political staffer who Brittany Higgins says she first disclosed her rape allegation to give evidence in a closed session of Bruce Lehrmann's defamation trial. The judge decided he would allow some changes to procedure to protect her mental health in the face of 2 medical reports. Earlier today, a veteran news executive defended the interview with Ms Higgins on Network 10's The Project, which is the subject of the case.
More pressure on The Project. The team that put the interview to air has faced repeated questions over whether it identified Mr Lehrmann, even though he wasn't named. Today, former Network 10 executive Peter Meakin conceded The Project did offer more details than a story published by News.com earlier that day. You knew that many more people were likely to identify Mr Lehrmann from those additional facts. No, I didn't know that. It was pretty obvious, wasn't it? Not to me, it wasn't. Bruce Lehrmann was ultimately charged with rape, but his trial collapsed due to juror misconduct, leaving no findings against him. His lawyer also queried whether enough questions were asked about Ms Higgins' account after the government disputed her claim that she didn't receive enough support. Did you think that narrative might not be accurate? I realised it was being challenged. The court also heard from Brittany Higgins' former boss, Queensland State MP Sam O'Connor. He said Ms Higgins told him about the alleged rape soon afterwards in a phone call while she was in Perth working on the federal election campaign. I absolutely remember the word rape. That's not something that you forget. He said Ms Higgins' demeanour changed significantly after the alleged incident and she was no longer the go-getter he first met. Late today, the court cut its live stream to hear evidence from Fiona Brown, the former Chief of Staff to Ms Higgins and Mr Lehrmann in the office of Senator Linda Reynolds. In her closed session, Ms Brown said it did enter her mind Ms Higgins had been sexually assaulted after she met with Bruce Lehrmann and he left the building. But she told the court she couldn't rule it in or rule it out. Patrick Bell, ABC News.
Coming up on 7:30 with Laura Tingle, the push to create an 18th NRL team based in Papua New Guinea.
Let's go, Tommy. Keep going, buddy. Come.
Papua New Guinea has two religions, like one is Christianity and the other is National Rugby League.
It will do justice to rugby league. We have the 18th team of NRL stationed out of Port Moresby, PNG.
Also, I'll speak to the new Premier of Queensland, Stephen Miles.
The trial of media mogul and pro-democracy campaigner Jimmy Lai over charges that he colluded with foreign forces has begun in Hong Kong. Mr Lai was arrested under the national security law, which China has been accused of wielding to crush dissent. The case is widely seen as a test of Hong Kong's judicial independence.
After more than 1,000 days in solitary confinement, 76-year-old Jimmy Lai arrives for his landmark trial, hidden but with the world's eyes watching. Activists and supporters lined up overnight to witness the hearing in a case widely seen as a test of Hong Kong's judicial independence.
Jimmy and others, including my party members, have been locked up for many months and years. So it's very sad.
Known for his personality and steadfast support of Hong Kong's pro-democracy movement, he today smiled at his supporters in the courtroom. Mr Lai is facing charges of foreign collusion under what's known as the national security law, introduced by Beijing in 2020 to quell growing pro-democracy protests. Jimmy Lai's son Sebastian, who can't return to Hong Kong for fear of arrest, has little faith it will be a fair hearing.
It's going to be an absolute sham trial. It's a kangaroo court. As you mentioned, 3 government-appointed judges, the security minister boasting of a 100% conviction rate.
The UK's new Foreign Secretary David Cameron met with Sebastian and has toughened Britain's stance, now explicitly calling for its citizens' release.
And to be clear, these are charges for his journalism and for his peaceful pro-democracy activities.
Beijing calls Jimmy Lai a notorious anti-China figure bent on destabilising Hong Kong. But foreign governments and global advocacy groups say the sweeping national security law is being used as a weapon, with dozens of journalists and activists already prosecuted.
As a reporter outside Hong Kong, I think it is our duty to continue reporting it.
Jimmy Lai faces a maximum punishment of life in prison if found guilty. But at 76, even a shorter sentence could see him die behind bars. Kathleen Calderwood, ABC News.
Vladimir Putin has vowed to make Russia a self-sufficient power in his first campaign speech before a March vote. The Russian president will stand for a 5th Kremlin term in an election that will likely prolong his rule until at least 2030. Prominent critics who could challenge him on the ballot are either in jail or living abroad. But a little-known presidential hopeful who's calling for peace in Ukraine has inched closer towards formally registering as a candidate. The former journalist Yekaterina Dontsova has spoken of being afraid following the launch of her bid. For a growing number of families this year, items that normally feature on the Christmas menu are no longer affordable. New data shows Christmas puddings cost on average across Australia 23% more than 12 months ago, and fruit mince pies are 18% more. Prices of summer favourites like mango and pineapple have also jumped.
What's normally a joyous time of year is now a point of pressure for families feeling the pinch.
I love grapes actually. Back in India, grapes, I used to have it every single day, but in here it's too expensive.
Just trying to meal prep in terms of seeing what's more easy to be laid out for the week and not just jumping onto different dishes every day.
It's very hard. It's too much. I'm a pensioner. I can't afford to buy, used to buy.
Cherries, like that
The cherries I couldn't even afford, like $25 a kilo. I said, oh, that's gonna be so expensive. So I thought, no, better I will not,
And the proof is in the pudding when it comes to rising costs of food this year. Dr. Christina Zorbas has been tracking prices leading up to this festive season. She thinks it's no surprise some families are cutting back.
When it comes to the Christmas lunch, things like the basics like ham and prawns are actually a bit cheaper than they were last year. But the problem is that they are still on the more expensive end of the spectrum. And when you look at more basic items like a whole chicken, that's gone up.
According to the data, food items have skyrocketed over the past 12 months. Things like mangoes, pineapples and grapes have steadily increased, along with potatoes and canned tomatoes. There's been some relief with apricots and avocados, but for staples like milk and bread, prices only seem to be going one way. Staff at Food Bank Victoria are working hard to pack relief boxes for families this Christmas. It's a job that's currently feeding more than 57,000 people per day, the highest number Food Bank's seen in 93 years.
The most people we're seeing now are people with jobs who've never had to face this sort of hardship before. We just had a market a week ago in Knox, and 80% of the people who came there, over 350 families, had never had to reach out and ask for food relief before.
What we're hoping for is just a bit of accountability from the major supermarkets and some clarity around why food prices have gone up, and then hopefully some policy measures that really ensure that food stays affordable for everyone.
Regardless of any supermarket specials, the items some people can afford to put on the Christmas table is going to look a bit different this year, which means less of this and a bit more of that, as consumers hope the new year brings in some relief. Courtney Withers, ABC News.
To finance now, and share markets in Australia and overseas fell as investors turned cautious after last week's strong gains. Here's David Chow.
Today was a bit of a downer for many share markets across the world, especially compared to last week's exuberance, which was sparked by America's central bank telegraphing its plans to cut interest rates next year. So while the Dow Jones hit another record high, it was all red across Europe and Asia after a head honcho from the US Federal Reserve pushed back against markets by reminding us that it's quite premature to be talking about rate cuts at this point, especially since inflation is still way too high. Locally, the All Ords finished its day marginally lower, but some stocks did ridiculously well, like Tabcorp, after it received a new 20-year betting licence from the Victorian government, and Link Administration, which is on the verge of being taken over by Japan's Mitsubishi Bank for $1 billion. Meanwhile, AMP has crunched the numbers on this so-called Santa rally and found that December is in fact one of the best months for the local share market, for 10 out of the last 15 years at least. And the odds also seem to be favouring the Aussie dollar, which has risen above 67 US cents, close to a 4-month high. And finally, oil prices are starting to recover again after suffering heavy losses in the past couple of months. It comes after some of the world's biggest shipping companies announced they'll stop sending their vessels through the Red Sea, where 10% of the world's trade passes through, due to recent attacks by Houthi militants on their cargo. If this drags on, it could lead to supply disruptions, which would be bad news on the inflation front. And that's finance.
Australian spinner Nathan Lyon says there's no way he's considering retirement anytime soon after stamping himself as one of Test cricket's greats with his 500th wicket. Lyon became just the 3rd Australian and 8th player in the world to reach the milestone as Australia completed a comprehensive first Test victory over Pakistan in Perth.
The historic moment that almost wasn't. As Pat Cummins weighed up a review.
Pat didn't want to review it. Nate was mumbling away. He wasn't saying anything.
I think I was actually said it was high, so I got that wrong.
I know I was quietly confident that it would hit leg, hoping that was all very quietly confident.
Thankfully for Nathan Lyon, the captain pulled the trigger.
Hitting the wickets, Richard.
500 Test match wickets for Nathan Lyon.
Yeah, it's something I'm very proud about. I don't think it's probably hit me yet. 500
soon became 501. as Lyon and Josh Hazlewood cleaned up the tail, with Pakistan all out for just 89. Lyon becomes the first Australian off-spinner to reach 500, joining Shane Warne and Glenn McGrath as the only Australians to pass the milestone.
I don't think it's any secret that he's probably the most important cog in our bowling lineup.
It's been unbelievable to watch his career. Obviously, I came in sort of the second half of his career, but yeah, just a class above any other spinner.
Despite recently turning 36, Lyon has no plans to retire.
There's no way I want to give this up just yet, so if I can keep playing my role, keep trying to get better each and every day, then I'll try and play as long as I can, because I bloody love this team and I love playing cricket for Australia.
His teammates hopeful he can keep tallying up the wickets.
I still think you've got, say, 40, 50 test matches. That's 4 or 5 years, 10 a year. Probably average, 4 a game? It's another couple hundred, 700.
Australia now has more than a week to prepare for Boxing Day in Melbourne, with Cummins hinting an unchanged lineup could be on the cards. Blake Kagi, ABC News.
The Matildas will return to Melbourne in February for a chance to book a spot in the Paris Olympics. The state government has announced the match against Uzbekistan will be played at Docklands Stadium on the 28th of February. It'll follow a clash in Uzbekistan 4 days earlier with the winner of the two games.
I think the atmosphere that we've experienced in Melbourne for our games against France and then Canada was just incredible, and we definitely felt the love, and to kick off 24 with a monumentous game and one that we hope to sell out and really inspire and keep inspiring the next generation, I think is incredible.
Sam Kerr's Chelsea is 3 points clear at the top of the English Women's Super League after a 3-0 victory over Bristol City. The Matildas captain scored the Blues' third goal in the 59th minute. Chelsea will play Harkin in the Champions League on Thursday before a month-long break. Well, crews competing in the Sydney to Hobart yacht race face a tense week preparing for all weather conditions, with much uncertainty surrounding the long-range forecast. 105 yachts are competing in this year's 628 nautical mile race, including 4 Supermaxis and 19 two-handed entrants. The Bureau of Meteorology briefed navigators on the expected conditions, with high temperatures and humidity across New South Wales continuing in the lead-up to the Boxing Day start. A low-pressure system is predicted over the Tasman, but it's unclear when that will hit. To the short-range weather forecast now. And last night, minimums were between 11 and 15 degrees. The lowest of 6 was recorded at Mount Hotham. Today, it was cloudy with isolated light showers in the south and central parts and in the Wimmera. Maximum temperatures were 2 to 4 degrees above the December average. Mildura and Walpyup were the hottest places to be, with a top of 37. I see Oudyn there as well. In Melbourne, we hit our high of 25.8 degrees at around 12:30 this afternoon, and it's still 25 now outside. Interstate today, it was mostly clear in Sydney. Brisbane and Hobart had showers. It was mostly sunny in Perth, stormy in Adelaide and partly cloudy in Darwin. The satellite image is showing thick cloud over northern Queensland, as you'd expect, a broad band of cloud over South Australia and mid to high level cloud over western Victoria and Tassie. A trough will move through western and central parts of the state tonight and into the east of Victoria tomorrow. A tropical low will bring rain and storms to the NT top end and far north Queensland tomorrow, and there'll be showers and storms over parts of Queensland, New South Wales, eastern Victoria and Tasmania. For the capital city, showers developing with a possible storm for Sydney. Wind will ease in Perth and be partly cloudy. Showers for Brisbane and Hobart, partly cloudy in Adelaide and Darwin. Back home, it'll be an overcast day with isolated showers across the state during the morning. Cool to mild temperature-wise. Possible storms in the north and east in the morning, and the showers will move to the east through the day. And fire danger will be high over northern and western districts. On the bay, southwesterly winds will get up to 30 knots by the early afternoon, so waves up to 1.5 metres. There's a strong wind warning for Port Phillip, Western Port, and the central Gippsland and East Gippsland coasts. In Melbourne tomorrow, there's a high likelihood of showers in the morning and early afternoon between the cloudy conditions. We're heading for a top of 18, climbing just 2 degrees from our overnight low of 16. And looking ahead, Wednesday cloudy 19, Thursday and Friday mostly sunny, cloudy on Saturday as well. Jumping to Christmas Day, partly cloudy and 21. That's it for this evening's bulletin. Good night.